Okay, the saga of the runaway Texas Democrats, it all continues. In fact, earlier today, Republican Senator John Cornyn announced that FBI Director Kash Patel has approved his request to help state and local law enforcement locate those runaway Texas Democrats who fled the state in an attempt to prevent the Republicans there from redistricting. Well, the state House Democrats are attempting to prevent the Texas State House from achieving a quorum, which is necessary for them to do business and to redistrict. So what is the redistricting effort in Texas all about? Well, joining me now to unpack all of this is Hans von Spakovsky. He is the Election Law Reform Initiative Manager at Heritage Foundation and Senior Legal Fellow at Heritage Edwin Meese III Center for Legal and Judicial Studies. Hans, always great to have you. Thank you for joining us on Washington Watch.
Well, Jody, it's nice to actually talk to you again, since you and I have known each other a long time.
A long time, and man, I just always have utmost respect for you. And this issue, I think it's important for our viewers and listeners to try to wrap their brain around what all is going on here. And there's been a lot of attention this week on these Texas House Democrats and what they're doing. But let's start, if we can, Hans, if you can just explain for us what redistricting is all about and the issues that are at stake here.
Well, redistricting is when the state legislature, in almost every state, although there are exceptions to some states, draw the boundary lines of political districts in the state. And that's usually everything from congressional districts, of course, to the boundary lines of the state legislative districts. What's at issue right now in Texas are the congressional districts. These were drawn up in 2021 after the 2020 census. But the reason this is going on now, 5 years later, after the 2020 census, is frankly because of some changes in the law and the fact that the Justice Department has warned Texas that it has got to fix problems with 4 current congressional districts in the state of Texas, which frankly unconstitutionally, illegally used race as a predominant factor when they were drawing the lines, and you can't do that.
So Texas has really been ordered, I guess is the right word, from the Justice Department to do this. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And when they did this back in 2021, they thought they were obligated to do so to draw up what they call coalition districts. So these are districts where 2 different racial minority groups, when combined together, are more than 50% of the voters in a district. They thought they had to do it. Why? Well, because the Court of Appeals that covers Texas, that's the Fifth Circuit, had issued a decision almost 40 years ago saying that those kind of what they call coalition districts are protected and required by the Voting Rights Act. Well, last August, in another case coming out of Texas, Galveston County, the Fifth Circuit said, you know what? We made a mistake when we decided that, and these kind of political alliances between different racial groups, that is not covered and not protected by the Voting Rights Act.
Wow. So here we go. We have a host of Texas Democrats who have fled the state trying to prevent a quorum so that legislative action can't take place. And I mentioned coming into the segment that Senator Cornyn has asked the FBI to get involved. Let me ask you, can the FBI or some other federal agency actually charge Illinois state officials for actively harboring these Texas Democrats?
Well, they can't, but they can help the state of Texas locate these folks and potentially get extradition of them. The reason for that is that the last time the Democrats did this, walked out to prevent a quorum, was also back in 2021. And why did they do it? Well, they didn't want to vote on election integrity reform bills. that Texas was passing, including putting in a voter ID law. So they changed the rules, they changed the law in Texas that say that legislators who abscond are not only subject to arrest, they can be fined $500 a day. So if when arrest warrants are issued, Jody, you know that state arrest warrants, no matter what they're for, if someone flees a state, the FBI always steps in and tries to help a state find somebody who has violated state law, and that's the situation here.
This is just absolutely fascinating how all this is unfolding. And of course, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has ordered these Democrats, as you just mentioned, arrest on civil warrants. So if you can, Hans, what's the difference, like in a case like this, between a civil arrest warrant and maybe a criminal arrest warrant?
Well, with a criminal arrest warrant, the only difference is that, you can't be charged criminally when you're brought into court. A civil arrest warrant, you can be arrested, you can be brought back to Texas, and you can be fined. They just can't put you in jail for it. So if they can find these folks, they can bring them back to Texas. And, it's not just the FBI that's involved, but the very legendary Texas Rangers, who also are now involved in trying to find these folks and bring them back. Now, the thing is, remember, this was a special session, Jody, and you know what that is. They weren't in regular session. The governor called them in. That special session, I think, has only got about another week and a half before it expires. But even if they can't get enough Democrats back to get a quorum, the governor, Governor Abbott, has the power under the state constitution of Texas to call another special session. And he can keep doing that one after another until they can get enough Democrats back actually to form a quorum and to vote on this plan, which has 5 new congressional districts.
Wow. So is that what you anticipate ultimately is going to happen? It sounds like these Democrats fleeing are actually just trying to buy time until the special session expires. So do you think the governor is going to just call another special session?
Yeah, I think he will, and I think he will use that to, like I said, try to round them up enough to bring him in. Again, going back to history, 2021, when they fled the state to avoid a vote on election reforms, eventually they brought enough of them back, enough of them came back so they could hold a vote on that particular bill, which, by the way, was then challenged in court, as you would expect, and just within the last couple of days, the same Fifth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals upheld that law, saying it was perfectly legal, perfectly constitutional, and was not discriminatory or unlawful as Democrats had claimed. As you know, they're making the same kind of claims right now.
So what's going to happen with that? Your guess?
I think this plan eventually is going to pass. They will get sued, but I think if they get sued, the state of Texas, they're going to lose. Because like I said, all of this is being done to comply with a new decision by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. And I don't think that any lawsuit filed by Democrats, which will eventually get to the Fifth Circuit, I don't think the Fifth Circuit is going to say that somehow this new plan was wrong when in fact the legislature drafted up in order to comply with a decision of the Fifth Circuit.
Wow, that's fascinating. So in the process here, do you think we're going to see some of these booted from their office for this stunt? I know that's on the table as well.
Yeah, there is a statute in Texas that Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, has cited, and so has the governor, that allows a local court to declare that a particular legislator has abandoned his office. Now, in order to do that, the Attorney General's got to actually file a lawsuit, and a court will make that determination. And Paxton has warned that if folks aren't back by Friday, the 8th of August, then he will start filing lawsuits to try to convince local judges that these folks have abandoned their seats, which would then give the governor the ability to potentially appoint replacements and then have a special election.
Wow, incredible. I wish we'd go on with this, Hans, but let me move on. Another big issue yesterday, President Trump instructed the Commerce Department. We talked about this a little bit earlier today, but to start work on a new census.
Right.
Can you take us a little bit deeper into that? Explain to us what this is really all about.
Well, what the Constitution says is you have to have a census at least once every 10 years, but there's nothing that prevents the federal government from doing one more often. This is actually justified doing a mid-year census for two really important reasons. One, Jody, as you know, we are one of the most highly mobile societies of any Western democracy. People move a lot. That is such a factor in Texas, for example, that since the 2020 census, the Census Bureau itself estimates that more than 2 million new residents have moved to Texas, huge number. But here's the other big problem with the 2020 census. In 2022, the Census Bureau put out a report admitting that it had made serious errors in the 2020 census. They had overcounted 8 states, had undercounted the population of 6 states. And those errors were so large that Texas was actually cheated out of an additional congressional seat it should have gotten. Florida was cheated out of 2. The Census Bureau didn't count more than 500,000 residents of the state. Those errors and those mistakes are another, frankly, good reason why we ought to do another census.
Wow. And this census this time will not count illegal immigrants. That likewise plays in all of this, what you're talking about, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And that's a significant factor. As I'm sure you know, if, for example, states started using citizen population to redistrict instead of total population, it would very much change the political boundaries of many congressional districts, particularly in places like Texas and Florida.
So from your perspective, what does the Constitution, where is that on this side of the issue between counting just citizens versus those who are here illegally?
Well, we've actually, until recently, been asking on the U.S. Census whether or not somebody is a citizen or not. In fact, the first president to recommend that and it got on the census was Thomas Jefferson. It was only during the Obama administration they decided to take that question off so that we wouldn't have any information about it. States can use citizen population for redistricting if we want to change apportionment. When the Census Bureau determines how many members of the U.S. House each state has, right now that formula, it's a federal statute, it's based on total population. That'll take a change in the law passed by Congress to change the apportionment formula from total population to citizen population. They should do that. That is the only thing that's fundamentally fair to citizens who get to vote in our representational republic.
Yeah, otherwise you have foreign interference.
Yes,
I mean, that
exactly
is really,
right.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I let you go, Hans, I wanted to throw this out to you real quickly. The Fifth Circuit, you mentioned them a while ago, they ruled that Texas can enforce state law that invalidates mail-in ballots that are submitted without proper voter ID. Unpack real quickly the significance of that for us.
Well, that's really important. As you probably know, Georgia passed a very similar requirement, and so have a lot of other states. Many states that had put in an ID before you can vote in person had a huge hole in that security, which was so many people are voting with absentee ballots, and they didn't have to show an ID for that. And absentee ballots, as the court says in this case, are one of the biggest sources of election fraud in elections throughout the U.S. So putting in an ID requirement is extremely important in protecting the honesty and fairness of our elections.
Yeah, I mean, this is just common sense. You have to provide IDs for everything. Why would we not want IDs for perhaps one of the most important things that a citizen can do in our country, vote? It just seems like this ought to just be common sense and readily accepted. It is. But there's always a reason behind it, why they don't want it.
Right, that's right. And listen, the American people, they disagree on many issues. This is one they all agree on. Overwhelming support for requiring an ID.
Overwhelming. Thank you so much, Hans von Spakovsky from the Heritage Foundation. Your expertise is always welcome on Washington Watch. We appreciate it very much. Thank you for joining us.
Sure, thanks for having me.